All right. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Godfrey. Thanks, Cynthia. Uh, Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Meaney. I have a couple of slide deck, but really, you should have the summary. I always do this one. Sorry, I don't want it to automatically go. Um, if you have the summary sheet that outlines the 16 recommendations that I'm going to walk us through right now. My goal is to talk to you for under 10 minutes. So I'm going to go through these slides really fast because I'd really like to talk with all of you in dialogue, answer questions, and chop it up. So again, my name is Jessica Meaney. About 10 years ago, a bunch of friends and I got together and we founded Investing in Place. We are a group really focused on public dollars, where our tax dollars go for the built environment, who decides, who benefits, and things like that. And we've done a whole bunch of reports over the past 10 years and convenings and conferences and stuff about street sidewalks in particular and buses and transit and things like that. So just last week, we released this report with 16 actions that we believe the city of Los Angeles needs to take to do some structural reform and how the city's sidewalks, streets, and parks are managed. We developed Investing in Place, brought together a public space leadership council made up of all of these experts, many former city staffers. The one thing when we were forming this group we were really thinking about was people who have experience working in the cities of LA's public right-of-way or in park system or with the budgets and things like that. So here's our 24 experts that we worked with to develop all the recommendations I want to share with you today. So they're really reforms, right? So our 16 recommendations fall into how we see it as three really big buckets: governance reform, really examining all the departments that are working in the public right of way and in our parks, and planning and budgeting questions. I'm just going to go through our first three, right? So the first one is get everybody on the same page about what the heck we're trying to do. The city of LA, we have, I don't know, 40 different departments, but for streets and sidewalks and parks, the big ones are our Public Works Department, Department of Transportation, Parks and Rec. Also, who weighs into all of those things are things like DWP, the Planning Department, all sorts of other departments. But when we think about our streets and sidewalks and our public spaces, all those departments have different goals. Some are trying to keep things safe. Some are trying to do things under budget. Some are trying to do various things. And so our number one recommendation is to have the mayor and city council adopt a vision for everything, how we are treating our public spaces from an infrastructure point of view, right? The second big recommendation is one I presented last week to the Charter Reform Commission. We are recommending charter reform to require a 5-year CIP. Also recommending in our report, in our recommendations, to dissolve the Board of Public Works and establish a true director of public works. So you might already know this, but the Department of Public Works exists of 5 bureaus, right? So it's the Bureau of Sanitation, it's the Bureau of Engineering, it's the Bureau of Street Services, it's the Bureau of Street Lighting, and the Bureau of Contract Administration, and then a handful of other things that have been put in there over the years. So you have a lot of department heads with no one in charge, and they report to the city's only citizen commission that is staffed by 5 public works members, which are appointed by the mayor, serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and is typically a position that is a springboard for political office and other things. So all really nice people who I really like, and they work really hard. But there isn't a level of expertise that one would want for managing such an important department for a city of 500 square miles. We drafted in our report a suggested vision for people to consider. I just put it here real quick, but something to kind of bounce off. This was something I think I'm getting the people that are trying to come in. We talked about this not only with our leadership council, but a salon we held, and we invited other people. Brendan was there. It was really exciting. But what is the goal we have for the city of LA's public spaces, right? A lot of conversations about fiscal responsibility, using the dollars well responsibly, not just paying off liability lawsuits, equity, right? So every neighborhood gets investments and it comes up to the same level, and things like that. Also, just a pro tip, we number all these recommendations that are consistent in all of our documents. So if you want to talk about a specific recommendation, you should be able to. So number four is we want to create an Office of Public Space and Infrastructure Management. You guys probably already talked about this, but the City of Los Angeles has no capital planning office. The way projects are developed or come about are often through really awesome city council staff, really great community leaders, sometimes in departments, but there isn't a master strategic plan of what are the goals we have for the cities, what are what are the projects we need to get there. Also, you might know this too, the City of LA, the Department of Planning in the city has very little to do with streets, sidewalks, and parks. They're almost exclusively focused on private development. So we really think it's important for everyone to get on the same page. Is that what we want? Does everyone know that's how it works? Things like that. And then LADOT is a really important department. However, it sits outside Public Works. LADOT is only responsible for the roadbed. Anything happening above the curb, so that's our sidewalks, our access ramps, our street trees, our street lights, our public bathrooms, all of that is happening in Public Works. So you have one department who's managing the pavement, the street lights, the dash system, and then you have another department that's managing everything else in that public right of way, and they are completely separate. We use that, we say explore. We're not really sure about moving departments around, but we really think there needs to be a large conversation in the city about this. Also, rec and parks, right? So they would be part of a 5-year capital infrastructure program. We're not suggesting they be moved or anything like that, but really setting up everyone for success. So when Rec and Parks is working with Public Works and these other projects, making sure everybody knows what they're doing, how they're talking, and is getting consistent leadership. Our 8th recommendation is about local hire, really. So if we want to do a 5-year capital infrastructure program where we're laying out over $1 billion every year that's being invested, we want to make sure those jobs go to Angelenos and people who live in the city so they can make money and support their families and have good careers, right? We want a real intention around that. Our group, our leadership council, talked a lot about number 9. There's a lot of pros and cons to this, but a lot of people in our leadership council felt like throwing money at the city without fixing the structural problems with the way public spaces are managed and the infrastructure maintained and not maintained was not gonna solve any problems. So our group is very interested in reform before new revenue. Also, supportive of moving to a 2-year budget cycle, something that a lot of leaders are talking about, and we fully support. That makes sense. If you've ever, I think you guys have probably unpacked this in LA Forward about how the budget cycle works. Every year, the city staff often feel like they're on a constant hamster wheel of like submitting budget memos, things like that. For example, the city of LA just finished its budget in June, the mayor signed it, and in September, they'll be asked to already submit memos for the next year's budget. Also, though, I want to just take a beat on number 10. Typically, the way cities do things that I've looked at, Santa Monica, other cities, 1 year they'll update their operating budget. So what are the staffing levels the city needs to accomplish its programs, its goals, its things like that. And 1 year it updates their CIP. So one is about the operating costs, what are the staff we need, and what are the things about the way we want to spend the dollars, the infrastructure, the maintenance, the projects and programs. We talked a little bit about like assets, right? So some city council offices are very focused on assets. So what I mean by that is like, how many miles of sidewalks does the city of LA actually have? What condition are they in? What would it cost to bring them up into full recovery, into good state of good repair? This is a basic practice that cities do, libraries do, hospitals do. If you are a big company or a big city or anything, you have to know, what do we own? What condition is it in? And what would be the financial plan to make sure it stays in good shape? That leads right into 12, which we really believe the capital infrastructure plan isn't just about building things, it's about maintaining them and keeping them in good shape. Number 13 is a little technical, a little wonky, but this is basically like when we are approving big projects, we are looking at the life cycle of that project. What does it take to keep it in good shape, to maintain it, to keep it clean, to keep it the lights turned on, etc. That's what's called the life of project cost. That is standard operating practice for the way Metro does it in other cities. So we think that's a really important best practice. You guys have been talking about CIPs for a couple weeks, so you know all these things, but just quickly, like getting everyone on the same page about what the heck we're doing, coordinating departments, having accountability and transparency. You might have already seen this, but I just think it's really important to just keep reminding ourselves that LA is a real outlier, that this is not normal to be operating without a capital infrastructure plan, infrastructure program. It's not normal to be winging it 1 year at a time, right? So looking at the top 10 most populated cities in the US, they've all got one. LA doesn't. Oh, well, maybe in California we do things differently. So those are the top 10 cities in California by population. But so you get the idea. This is a standard governance practice. So when we talk about a capital infrastructure program, while we're talking about how you manage dollars, we're talking about how you manage the city, how you take care of things and good governance. You guys know a lot of these key points. Just put them on there really to remind myself what I want to talk about. You guys have probably heard all the numbers, right? Last fall, Steve Lopez did a really bunch of good articles on the city sidewalks, right? If you put in a 311 request to get a curb cut, there is a 99% probability you are not going to get it. There is a 10-year backlog for access ramps, and that is for members of the city's class action lawsuit, Willits, right? So those are individuals with disabilities are because the city has not been in compliance of American with Disabilities Act. There is the largest class action lawsuit for the city sidewalks, right? So 200,000 empty tree wells, takes a year to get a street light fixed, and things like that. Wanted to flag this for your work group to talk about at some point. So as we are all asking for the city to get their house in order and to create a 5-year infrastructure program, there is a lot more details that start to kind of have to be ironed out, right? How often should it be updated? What is the criteria for an emergency update or for shifting city priorities? And then other cities have pretty impressive citizen advisory committees that aren't just like getting together to talk, but actually have a formal role in advising what's prioritized, what gets updated. And often like Minneapolis, San Diego, sometimes these advisory committees are so well designed that they're actually built by a lottery system. So they are reflective of the demographics, not just who knows about what's going on and signs up, which the history of the neighborhood council, which has gotten so much better over the past 10 years. But in the beginning, it was skewing very older, white, and wealthy voices. But there was a way to set this up so you could actually have a citizen advisory committee. And heck, maybe you pay the members, right? So this is really important work that is weighing in. Last bullet, really important to me too, is that you have an appendix of your wish list, your unfunded needs. So like, I don't know if y'all heard about when President Biden had like the biggest infrastructure federal act ever a couple years ago. Had LA had consensus and adoption on what our infrastructure priorities were, we would have had really competitive applications. We would have had widespread support. We would have heard from lots of people. There was nothing like that. A handful of people picked what was applied for those federal dollars. And while I love CIPs and I'm a huge fan, this is it's more than just the CIP. It's about good governance. It's about running the city. It's about the civic promise, right? So we expect the government, the contract we have with the government to provide quality of life, public spaces, access, ways to get around and see our families, get to work, get to school, things like that. I think you all know, I think we saw it in that list. This is what we want, right? I know I certainly want a lot more trees, street lights that work, pools that are open. So I think we all know there's so many reasons. The Olympics, with the budget deficit the city just went through. But also I think like something I think a lot about is things feel really overwhelming, especially like with the ICE raids, with the immigration challenges that are affecting a lot of people we love, maybe people on this call even too. It's just really fragile, tenuous time, economic uncertainty, you name it. But that $1 billion that we talk about a lot, like over $1 billion every year, that's 100% local dollars. That's 100% controlled by the mayor and city council. And so, tsunami alerts, devastating fires, all these things that feel out of control. But this creating and managing the city's public dollars to improve everyone's public spaces and quality of life is something leaders in Los Angeles can do right now.
Chiquito, bonito, precioso, mi vida, vas a comer.
This is my last slide. So I just think like this is where we all see each other. This is where we connect. This is where we get out to see our family members. Public space is the kind of the thread that links together the city and our neighborhoods. And I just think LA is a real outlier how it's been managing it. It does not have to be this way, especially when we control a lot of the local funding that could change this. And so that's all of the points. And so now let's just be great to talk and hear what everyone's thinking.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And I just want to chime in with points of clarification just to make sure folks are thinking with all sides of their brains right now. Jessica just presented 16 recommendations that are relevant in particular because the city of LA is having a charter commission that is evaluating changing the city charter. And these are all infrastructural reforms that could be passed onto the city council that then could put them on the ballot as soon as next November to impact LA City infrastructural work in 2026 and beyond, right? Is kind of what Jessica just presented. She's presenting these because at the same time, there is a CIP, capital infrastructure plan or program happening right now, or in formation right now. And she's seeing these two things happening parallel. A CIP is being talked about at the city level, and the commission has an opportunity to enable CIPs current and future to be able to work for us better. So those are just want to make sure that we're seeing both of those two tracks happening at the same time.
And I'll just add a little of that, executive directives are awesome, but they come and go and they're based on per people, right? So I saw some really cool ones come from Antonio Villaraigosa back in the day around transit-oriented corridors. Mayor Eric Garcetti did some great ones around Vision Zero, great streets. But we want to codify it as a basic way of managing the city, like change structural reform and how the city is managed. And if we need to do charter reform to do that, and if there's an opening to do that, let's absolutely do it. But also, how are we pushing this to be more citywide and outlast an executive directive and actually pick up a hell of a lot more speed than we're seeing with executive directive number 9. So what do you guys think? And also apologies if I went over things that too fast or too slow or things like that, but what are you guys thinking out there?
Brandon, Cynthia, I'm going to have you feel free to moderate questions and Q&A.
Sure. I raised my hand first, but I'll let other people go first. So Tracy, I see you up next.
Hi, just a quick question. You mentioned about neighborhoods getting the same amount of money, but I feel, especially growing up in South LA and going to school in Chatsworth, this is an 80s, so I don't know how the demographic have changed, but I noticed, and it's something that drove me crazy. I'm like, okay, LA Unified is the same LA Unified, but why are schools in the Valley getting more money than the schools that I'm supposed to go to? So the fact that I had to go on the bus for almost an hour, not even 2 hours round trip to go to school, why wasn't there enough, money put in my neighborhood so I didn't have to do that? So when you say the same amount of money, that's not equity. It sounds like you're assuming that everybody's starting off on the same level. That's the difference between equality, and equity. We're not starting off on the same level. We're starting off on different levels. And I mean, I'm not attacking. I'm just saying, because I'm if I just misheard you or anything like that, but there's no way that neighborhoods should get the same amount of money when more neighborhoods, some neighborhoods aren't getting hardly any money at all.
Yeah, that's not what I meant, Tracy. We meant that all neighborhoods should be at the same level. So
Okay.
dividing the money equally, but ensuring that every neighborhood has good infrastructure. That not only the wealthy neighborhoods have tree canopy, not only the wealthy neighborhoods have a nice place to rest, but that all of our neighborhoods are operating at the same level of wonderfulness. So I hear
Thank
you.
you.
I fully agree with you. Yeah, it's certainly currently right now the way the city works is most of the dollars are what we call divide by 15, and so each council office is looking for their equal cut. And I think we all can agree that the council districts vary quite tremendously in quality of life and infrastructure investments. Yeah. But it's a key point, and I think that that's a really important thing to be supporting leadership and figuring out how to prioritize and how our vulnerable communities come first, not last. So I'm right there with you for sure.
Tom, I see you're up next.
Tom, you're
Oops.
muted if you're asking your question.
Oh, is that me? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Okay, thanks. So Jessica, we saw the list of all the cities in the country who has one except us. And then I know the first motion to try to do this goes all the way back to 2013. Can you give us, 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons why this is so incredibly difficult for Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, the big reason is we don't live in a culture that supports elected officials who are thinking long-term and citywide. Everybody needs something before their next election cycle. Everybody wants to do things for their loudest voice, their biggest donor. We don't have anyone in the city right now, except for the mayor office, who's thinking the needs of the entire city. Those less resourced, those more vulnerable, versus those who are doing quite well. So I think that it's a heavy lift, and it's against going the way the status quo has been entrenched in the city of Los Angeles for the past 20, 25 years. The city, I think, used to have one back in the 90s, right? But I also think the big kahuna is about sharing power and transparency. If a handful of people understand how things work and how money is allocated, this is calling for all of us to get to know how the money is being prioritized. And so that's another culture shift. And then also just giving grace to the city staff. I mean, I think I heard in the budget hearings this June or May or whatever, that the city is operating with the same number of staff as they were in 2009. But of course, in the past 15 years, the city's budget has grown quite tremendously. So it's a heavy lift, and there is no city staffer who's doing long-term thinking for infrastructure, and not just long-term thinking, but lining it up with available funding, prioritizing, and doing the heavy political work of how to get people to share resources, to think beyond their district, to think citywide. So I think that's why this group is so incredibly important. I think Tom is absolutely right. There is no shortage of motions for a CIP. There's been at least half a dozen in the past 10 years, but we never get off the blocks. And we have this great executive directive and they're doing really good work, but we need so many civic leaders and so much pressure to say, hey, the system is broken. I really want my streetlights to work. I really want my sidewalk to be able to get fixed. This isn't rocket science. Cities all over the country do this. So I think that that's my best guess, is that it's hard. The current culture of politics, the way it works right now, we hardly reward. Because I did ask a friend who worked for Garcetti, hey, how come you guys didn't do a CIP? And they said, oh, Jessica, we talked about it, but we were running for re-election. There was no ribbon cutting, and we wouldn't see the benefits till we were termed out. So you need some gifted leadership who's really willing to think long term and for the entire city.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Chi-Chi.
Thank you. I have actually a couple of different questions. So I don't know if I can ask them all at once and then address them one by one, but I guess I can just mention them. The first one might be a simple one. It's just asking if there is a document that outlines how the Office of Public Space and Infrastructure Management would be structured, who would be responsible for not only overseeing it, but also selecting its members. I'm assuming the mayor, and then how long each member would serve, as well as how communities could provide feedback and get involved The other question I had was, what are the foreseeable benefits and drawbacks from a 2-year CIP versus a 5-year one, especially knowing that a mayor would serve a term of 4 years? So I'm just trying to figure out how that would work, and what was the thought process between a 2-year and then a 5-year. I just saw 5 years and my automatic reaction was, just having to create a plan probably takes quite some time, especially if we want community feedback. So shortening it down to 2 years just makes me a little weary that communities would not have enough time to be listened to, but maybe there's a reason why there's a 2-year suggestion. And then the last question that I had was how we can ensure that suggested changes or feedback is taken into account from voices of the most marginalized. So, for example, transgender, gender expansive, intersex communities, communities of immigrants, specifically communities where there's another language that's spoken other than English, such as Spanish, low income communities, etc. So, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll try to be quick too, because I'm watching the time. Those are all legit questions, and I know I went so fast on some really complicated things I've been thinking about a lot. So I probably screwed up some of the things I was trying to say. The Office of Public Space that we're recommending, would it be a city staff position department? It's basically we're trying to build a capital planning office, and they would report to the Director of Public Works. So it's not commissioners, it's creating a staff who are doing the hard work of the CIP and all that, working with the different departments, prioritizing things like that. And their boss is the Director of Public Works, who the Director of Public Works reports to the mayor and city council, right? So we're recommending a 2-year budget process for the city's overall budget, right? So right now the city's budget process is 1 year at a time. That 2-year recommendation is separate from the CIP. We are recommending a 5-year CIP. Frankly, I would love a 10-year CIP. I think and the way CIPs work is they tend to get revisited, updated every other year, every 3 years. They are evolving constantly, and if there are pressing city needs, terrible emergencies, they can be updated and changed. But again, you have an operating budget that's how many staff do we do it and need to do things, and then a CIP is the projects, the maintenance dollars, the long-term thinking. So hopefully that helps. And your third question, I didn't even write it down. What was your third question?
Oh, it was just basically how we can ensure that
Oh
the
yeah.
voices of
Then
more marginalized can be listened to.
do a lot of hard work and push the city to I don't have the answer for that. I think that's a really important question. I mean, I would recommend that the CIP have a citizen advisory committee and that it have actual power and influence and it be actually reflective of who lives in the city. Also, though, I heard you say too, we're not recommending a long-term planning process. There are plenty of existing plans, and Angelinos have been weighing in a lot. It's about pulling together these existing project lists, getting priority, and having people weigh in, but not a long-term thing, because I have planning fatigue. I don't know about you. But again, think of these CIPs as you refine them. Once it gets in there, what it has is the project, how much it costs, and the source of dollars that's paying for it, and the year it'll go. Now, you should, once everybody agrees and we put it in the CIP, it should take a lot of work to get it out, but it can be removed, it can be updated as things change. But the idea is you build all this consensus and agreement, you put it in, and then of course there are ways for it to be edited, but a lot of people have to publicly discuss why you're removing something from the CIP. I hope that makes a little sense, Gigi.
And I'll just add into to Chi-Chi's last question. There is no place right now for residents to be able to voice anything, regardless of whether or not they're marginalized or dominant. It's literally not a space. And that is why this working group is existing, because we found ourselves to be able to wedge ourselves in. We're having meetings with the mayor's office. We're trying to create those spaces. We're hoping to build out advocacy. We're hoping to do teach-ins with organizations across the city. That is part of the plan of this group, because right now the city is not doing that. And council offices aren't doing it either, because council offices also don't have voice in this. So we're trying to create space for all of us that are not on the steering committee in the mayor's office. right now.
Yeah, and also like having a CIP means there's like a project list and things you can look by council district of what projects are in the queue, what's going to come in 3 years, what's going to come in 4 years. Right now, there's absolutely nothing. You are completely in the dark in understanding what's coming to your neighborhood, unless you get like an email from some random community charrette for a program that's happening. So like check out Long Beach's CIP that you can sort by council district, neighborhood of what infrastructure projects are being planned in the next 5 years. And that to me is shared power and understanding. And then at least communities can know what the heck is being planned for their neighborhood if they want to weigh in on it. I think right now we're all in the dark.
Before I pass it on to Maya, I think Jessica, I think we're going to keep this discussion going till 8:55. That works with you?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, don't want to rush yet. But all right, that's all I want to confirm. All right, Maya, you're up.
Did she just hop off?
Okay.
Sorry, the mute button. Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I chatted in a question about the existing CAO's list of projects. And I do have a question broadly about how the CAO, which allocates all the funding, and in particular, the MICLA funding that funds our infrastructure, like what their role is in a CIP. But my broader question that I'm most interested in is building off of what Tracy said. And the CAO has been for a while now developing an equity index, and they've finalized it. It's called the, I think, Access, Disparity, and Equity Index. And it's a map of all the census tracts and their needs based on demographics and everything we would expect. And they have argued that that index that they have developed provides a kind of data-driven approach to how we make equitable infrastructure decisions. And so I was interested to see if in the discussions you had, if that index came up or if something like that came up on how to allocate resources.
Yeah, so MICLA I can't speak to exactly, but it's just one of probably 20 funds or more, right? So a lot of the funding that I've looked at for streets and sidewalks is like our local return, our gas tax, right? So I don't know if you all remember when we vote for Measure M, all the stuff that the county has. That's 700 million, all those local, you total that up every year. So MICLA is just one of them. I'm not entirely sure where all of those funding are going. The CAO is basically acting like our director of public works. They are the most powerful policymaker in the city of Los Angeles because they're deciding the money and the money is deciding the policy. Because we have no, like if that makes sense. So the CAO is incredibly important as it stands right now, which is one of the reasons we're recommending a director of public works who sets the vision, sets the budget, and kind of is bringing the ideas first instead of being told, you got X amount of money, figure out what the heck you can do with it. Also, there is what's called a CTIEP, which came out of a CIP motion years ago. We were trying to get this started. And it's a wish list, and it's really great, but it's not what a capital infrastructure program is, because the most important thing a capital infrastructure program does is it says, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's the projects we're going to do it, here's how much it's going to cost, and this money is locked up. This is the year we expect it, and we have programmed it, and it's in the schedule. The CTIP does not do that. It doesn't identify real funding. It doesn't identify years of which. It's just a wish list, and also it's a wish list that comes in different forms from different departments. It's not citywide, so it's not a true look of what's the state of our infrastructure, what do we need to fix, how do we want to prioritize it. And then your last question on the equity index from the controller's office, that's awesome that they did it. I'm glad that they're doing it. There are probably 5 to 10 definitions of equity in the city of Los Angeles. As far as I'm concerned, just pick one and use it and get leadership on acknowledging what, who said it first? Tracy said first, is have strong leadership acknowledging that all of our neighborhoods are not starting from the same place. And some are gonna need more, especially in the early years. So the controller's office has a really, like Galpern made a really good equity index. I'm sorry, DOT did, planning has one. My sarcasm is coming from a place of, we have lots of people who map stuff and create equity definitions, but I want to see it tied to money. And however we make that leap, and smarter people smarter than me can, like, it sounds like you know a lot about this, like pick one and consistently apply it. To me, when I did some work at Metro on defining equity, the most important factors are always race number one and income, right? You can put in a lot of other layers and things like that, but I think the trick I've seen in policies is actually applying the equity policy to money, the entirety of money, not just some like 2 million here or there, but to the entire program. And that's I think what needs to happen. But if it's a great equity index, I'm all for it. Typically, though, I'll just be honest, I see a lot of efforts like this get really hung up on the defining of equity and not getting to the hard political work of getting leadership and acceptance to tie it to real dollars.
All right, we've got 2 more questions, about 4 minutes. I'll pass it to Corey.
Hi. Yeah, this is a great presentation, lots of good information. My main question, and then I'd like to, maybe try and fold in a sub question, is social infrastructure, like community organizations, are they part of the public infrastructure strategy?
Yeah, I want them to be. I mean, that's the outcome that we're strengthening. If we have wonderful public spaces that we feel comfortable and welcomed in, we could be having more gathering places, strengthening social infrastructure. There's just some really beautiful reports I've read too about cities that value social infrastructure. I mean, so my background, I'm a sociologist, so my goal is to how do you get people more connected to each other because we save each other, right? And so they're intrinsically tied, and I would love to see more people talk about how having public safe spaces that are well maintained and cared for by our public agencies weave in the ability to strengthen our social infrastructure, to know our neighbors, to have places to be together. So I agree. I think however we can elevate that conversation as part of this, I'm all for it.
So one idea I had was, well, I guess the question would be, are there any queer organizations that are on this planning committee? And could you help with an introduction to them?
Is that a question for me, or is that an LA Forward question?
Yes, for you. Yeah, you had one of your your third slide was the list of different organizations. I think Act LA was part of that. Are there any queer orgs, and would you be able to help with making an introduction?
Yeah, they were more people, and I don't know what it was, more people's expertise and their knowledge around infrastructure and working projects. And so I can't, so I think I would have to say possibly, but not that I knew or came up in our work. But I think you raise a really great point. I think that the shared common thread, though, that whenever I talk to people is how are we creating public spaces that feel welcoming and accessible to everyone, right? So whether you have a disability, whether you're transgender, that is the goal, and a really hard one given the way we allocate dollars right now and who has the power. But I think keeping that as a North Star, I would totally agree with too.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, Jason, floor is yours.
Hey, so with what Godfrey said earlier about the fact that there's charter reform going on right now, as well as people looking at capital infrastructure plan, I guess I'm just wondering a little bit about the strategy of all of this, because you also mentioned earlier that one of the reasons we don't plan our city this way is because we have 15 council districts that operate as 15 fiefdoms, each fighting for their own, thing. Do we need to, before we can really accomplish something like this, do we need to create more council seats, or do we need to create council member at large seats who do fight for the whole city instead of for just their district? Are there other, I guess I'm wondering, since we want to hopefully walk and chew gum at the same time, are there structural reforms we should be going for during the charter reform that will make the CIP reform more doable for us strategically?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, having at large people might be it. Expanding the council, but if you expand the council and you don't fix the way the money's allocated, we then just divide by 25 or whatever the number. I mean, Jason, I do a lot of thinking about actually how do people on this call get involved. I think that asking City Hall to reform itself is I don't know if we're gonna get there. I think Angelinos and civic leaders like you guys on the call and everyone, we actually need to make a lot more noise about how this current system is operating is broken and not working for us, because I think that that how do we have more of a larger cultural conversation about what do we expect from our city and the allocation of our public dollars, and more transparency on that. I think you have, like what you said, walk and chew gum at the same time, like all of the above. But as someone who's been watching these motions for 10 years, emotion isn't going to solve this. Like civic power will solve this. And that is doable. Cities all over have done this, but it takes a lot of people to be like, I'm fed up. I want a well-run city. I don't want to be paying out 300 million in liability lawsuits where people are still getting injured in our dangerous conditions, and we're just paying it off, and people are even losing their lives, their families are being, so all of, I'm trying to get at, and maybe other people on this call can figure out better than me, but like, don't we want like a city that works, right? And so how do we capture all the frustration that a lot of people have? I know when I'm out, people always talk to me about sidewalks, so that we're actually building movement power.
Yeah, I think the answer is going to be that after we do this charter reform thing, we're going to need to put our own ballot measure up, because I think the city council will vote down our charter reforms. So like I'm kind of thinking ahead to planning out how we organize for that personally. So yeah, but thank you.
And Jessica, thank you very much for the presentation, all this incredible information, and everyone who asked questions. And speaking of civic power,